Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I am back with part 2 of my 10 cards 1 kit using the Simon Says Stamp December 2019 card kit. If you missed the first 5 cards, you can check those out in the video that I posted yesterday. For now, I'm going to jump here right into card number 6, and this is a quick one. So I've grabbed one of my black card bases and some of the pattern paper that I've trimmed down. All of my pattern paper backgrounds are trimmed to 3 3/4 by 5 inches for this kit. I've also grabbed one of the cut-aparts that was included with the pattern paper, and I've trimmed that out and placed that down on top as well. Here I've stamped out the sentiment GNOME for the holidays. I've used my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink for that. And then I've trimmed this down here. It measures just about 3/4 of an inch wide. I'm going to add some of my pop dots behind here, peel away that backing, and then I'll place this down on the top of my card base. For the inside here, I'm working on a Nina panel. These are also trimmed to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I'll stamp out that sentiment GNOME, pun intended. And then I've grabbed some of the black pattern paper, added some ATG to the back, and I'll place that across the bottom here. Again, adding some ATG on the back of that panel, and I'll place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 6. For card number 7, I'm going to start by stamping out this I love you no matter what sentiment. I've pulled in some red cardstock. I believe this is Wild Cherry from MFT, but I will double check and link that for you below. I have stamped that out using my Versamark ink, and I'm going to heat set this using some Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White Embossing Powder. I have then trimmed that down, and this strip measures just slightly over an inch. It's about 1 1/8 inches. I've grabbed this black and white check background pattern, and I'll place that on top of my white card base. And then I have this other pattern paper. This measures about 2 1/4 inches. And I'm going to add some ATG and place that down across the top, just trimming off the excess there. Here along the bottom, I'm going to add this GNOME sentiment. I'm going to pop that up using some foam dots. And I'll just press that into place, and then again trim away the excess. I'm going to pop up my GNOME also, but just halfway, since I'm going to have him overlapping with that sentiment. So I'll add a few pop dots here up at the top. Peel away that backing. And then on the bottom portion, I'll just add a little bit of art glitter glue to make sure that stays down nice and tight. And I will press that into place. For the inside, I'm going to stamp out the sentiment Merry Christmas. I did do a little bit of stamp surgery, and I cut apart the smaller Merry Christmas, so I would have that top portion of the sentiment there. Again, grabbing some of that excess pattern paper with the little Santa gnomes on it, I'm adding that along the bottom. That measures just slightly over 1/2 inch. I'll add some ATG to the back of my panel and place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 7. For card number 8, I'm starting out by stamping out the sentiment wishing you a very happy Christmas. I've pulled in some MFT steel gray cardstock for this, and I'm going to stamp that again with my Intense Black ink. I've trimmed that down to about 3/4 of an inch wide, and I'm going to add 3 of these little gnomes to the front of my card base here, keeping this one simple, no pattern paper. I'm just going to take those little gnomes, and here I'm going to add their little noses. So I'm just using some of the smallest sticky thumb foam dots for that. And then I'll press all of those into place. And then I'm going to pop up my gnomes as well. So I will get some foam dots added to the back of all of those. Skipping ahead here, I will peel away the backing. I'm going to start by adding this one on the right first. Then I'll add the one on the left. And finally place down the one in the center. Since my sentiment is going to overlap, I'm going to do that same sort of half on, half off technique. I've added just a row of my pop dots towards the bottom there, and I'll place that down over top of my gnomes. For the inside, again on a Neenah panel, and this one is trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4 since I didn't have any pattern paper on the front that I needed to match. I've stamped out that GNOME Better Holiday, and I'm going to add along the bottom here a small strip of that same steel gray cardstock. Go ahead and trim away that excess. And that will complete card number 8. For card number 9, I'm going to start by stamping out this Ho 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 sentiment using some Neenah cardstock and my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I've gone ahead and trimmed that out here, and I've pulled in one of my gnomes and a background pattern paper. I'm going to again create some snowdrifts using this shiny, beautiful white paper. And I thought I would just do one here. I wanted a little bit of a larger drift. You'll see I'll place that down here using my ATG gun. And then in a minute, I am going to also pull in that first strip that I had torn off just to give that a little bit more dimension, a little bit of extra texture. I'm just laying things out here with my gnome and my sentiment. And there I'm going to bring that in. Again, adding some ATG, and I'll place that along the bottom here. I'll go ahead then and trim off that excess. And then I decided I wanted to color in that Ho 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 sentiment just to pull in a little bit more of the gray color. I really should have stamped this with my Memento ink if I was going to use Copics, but I hadn't thought that far ahead. So I'm being very, very careful to not touch the tip of my marker into that ink. I don't recommend using this ink with your Copics. It can really mess up the tips, especially if it's on a lighter color. So if you plan to recreate this, I would stamp it with a Copic friendly ink. There I'm adding down this background panel, and I pulled in my gnome here. I'm gonna add a little bit of art glitter glue behind him and then just tuck him underneath that snowdrift. For my sentiment, I am going to pop this up using some of my foam dots. And I'll peel away the backing and get that pressed into place. For the inside, I'm back to my Neenah panel trimmed to 3 3/4 by 5 inches, stamping out that sentiment Merry Christmas. I'm going to add a strip of this dark red and black polka dot pattern paper along the bottom here. I will trim away that excess, add some ATG to the back, and place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 9. For card number 10, I am using one of the pattern papers that I had trimmed out when I started getting everything ready for the kit. But I wanted to show off all of the really pretty pattern papers that were in this kit. So I have decided I'm just going to layer some of the extra pieces and create my own pattern paper with a bunch of different strips of this. I'm going to strategically place this red here in the middle, and that's where I will end up stamping my sentiment. And I'm just adding some ATG and getting all of these pressed into place. I'll go ahead then and just trim around the edges to make those nice and neat. Gonna add this down to the top of a light gray card base. And then I'll take that over to my MISTI, and I'm gonna line up the sentiment GNOME for the holidays. Stamping that out here with my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. Since I had my MISTI out, I'm going to stamp my inside panel as well using that Merry Christmas sentiment. And then I pulled in a strip of this light pattern paper. I'll add some ATG to the back and place that along the bottom. This was one of my favorite pattern papers from the kit. Gonna again get my noses added to my little gnomes. These are my last two. And then I'll again pop both of those up using some foam dots. I'll peel away the backing and get these pressed into place. And then of course I'll trim off the excess. I'll add some ATG to the back of my inside panel, place that down on my card base, and that will complete card number 10. Here are a few close-ups of the finished cards. In the description box below, you'll find my blog post, which has additional photos and links to the supplies I used. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.